One invention quietly fed civilizations long before written history. It wasn't the wheel, it wasn't farming, it wasn't metal, it was a simple web of twisted fibers, a tool so effective that it turned rivers, lakes, and coastlines into reliable sources of food. Today, more than 35% of the world's wild-caught seafood is still harvested using some form of net, according to the Food and Agriculture Organization. Yet for almost all of human history, it didn't exist. So how did humans invent the fishing net? The answer changes how you see one of the greatest technological breakthroughs our species ever made. Because the fishing net wasn't just a better way to catch fish. It was the moment humans stopped chasing food and started letting food come to them. Around 23,000 years ago, a small community lived on the shores of the Sea of Galilee at a site known as Ohalo II. In the 1980s, archaeologists uncovered thousands of fish bones buried alongside stone tools, grinding stones, and the remains of brush huts. These people clearly depended on fish, but catching them was another story. A fish underwater is surprisingly difficult to hit. Light bends as it passes through the surface, making fish appear closer than they really are. Even experienced spearfishers must aim below what they see, miss once, and the entire school disappears. For early humans, every failed attempt wasted precious energy. Except there was a problem. Fish rarely travel alone. A single river can contain thousands of fish moving together in tightly packed schools. One hunter with one spear could only target one fish at a time. Nature had already solved this problem. Humans simply had to notice. Along the rivers of Africa, Europe, and Asia, predators used strategy instead of speed. Otters herd fish into narrow channels before attacking. Dolphins work together to push schools toward shallow water. Even pelicans cooperate, surrounding fish before scooping them up. The lesson was obvious. Don't chase every fish. Control where the fish can escape. But here's where it gets stranger. The first fishing nets have almost completely vanished from history. Unlike stone axes or bone harpoons, nets were made from materials that decay: tree bark, plant fibers, grasses, animal sinew. After a few decades, they disappear. After a few centuries, almost nothing remains. That means archaeologists rarely discover the invention itself. They discover its fingerprints. One of the greatest clues appeared in 1913, when workers draining a peat bog near Antria, in present-day Finland, uncovered an extraordinary object. It was a fishing net. Radiocarbon dating later showed it was roughly 8,300 years old. Even more remarkable was its construction. The net wasn't crude. It was woven with remarkable precision from willow fibers. Every knot was evenly spaced. Every opening was nearly identical. Whoever made it already understood weaving at a surprisingly advanced level. That raised an even bigger question. If humans could build a net this sophisticated 8,300 years ago, how much older was the original invention? A complex technology doesn't appear overnight. Someone had to discover how to twist weak fibers into strong cord. Someone had to learn which plants were flexible enough to survive in water. Someone had to realize that hundreds of small knots could create something stronger than a single rope. That process may have taken thousands of years. Evidence from Dolní Věstonice in the modern-day Czech Republic suggests humans were already producing twisted fibers and cord more than 27,000 years ago. Archaeologists found fired clay impressions showing woven and twisted plant fibers, proving that people had mastered rope making long before the oldest surviving fishing nets. That changes everything, because once you know how to make rope, a net is no longer impossible. It's just the next idea. But knowing how to weave fibers wasn't enough. Humans still had to answer one critical question. How do you build a trap that catches dozens of fish without letting a single one escape? That answer came from mathematics long before humans understood mathematics. A fishing net works because of patterns. If the holes are too large, fish swim straight through. If they're too small, the net becomes heavy, difficult to throw, and creates too much resistance in the water. Somewhere in prehistory, people discovered the balance. Not through formulas, through thousands of experiments. A knot tied one way slipped apart. A knot tied another way held firm. A wider mesh caught larger fish. A tighter mesh trapped smaller ones. Every successful catch became a lesson passed from one generation to the next. Around 15,000 years ago, people living in what is now Japan during the Jomon period were already becoming highly skilled fishers. Archaeologists have uncovered stone net sinkers, carefully shaped rocks with grooves carved around their edges. The stones themselves weren't important. What they were attached to was a woven net. The sinkers pulled it beneath the surface, creating an invisible wall that fish couldn't easily detect. The invention solved another problem. Fish don't stay in one place. Rivers rise and fall. Tides change every day. Seasons alter migration routes. Instead of chasing fish across changing waters, humans began placing nets where fish were already traveling. The river started doing the work. But here's where it gets stranger. Fishing nets changed far more than diet. They changed time. A hunter with a spear had to stay alert every second. Every meal depended on constant effort. A net was different. Once it was set, people could repair tools, gather plants, prepare fires, or care for children while the trap waited beneath the water. For perhaps the first time, a tool continued working even when its maker walked away. Anthropologists call this passive food collection. It was one of humanity's greatest technological breakthroughs. The same idea later appeared in animal traps, snares, fish weirs, and eventually agriculture itself. Instead of pursuing food, humans began designing systems that brought food to them. That's not the whole story. The invention of nets also changed human society. Fish spoil quickly. A successful net could catch far more than one family could eat in a single day. That encouraged smoking, drying, and sharing food within larger communities. Reliable fishing supported permanent settlements along rivers and coastlines long before many regions adopted farming. Archaeological sites around the Baltic Sea, the Nile River, and the Pacific coast of South America all reveal societies whose survival depended heavily on fishing technology. The net didn't simply feed individuals, it fed villages. And villages became towns, then civilizations. Even today, the basic design has barely changed. Modern nets are made from nylon instead of willow bark or plant fiber. Machines now tie millions of identical knots. Massive trawlers can deploy nets stretching hundreds of meters across the ocean. But the principle remains exactly the same as it was thousands of years ago. Create a barrier. Guide the fish. Let the water do the rest. So, how did humans invent fishing nets? Not through one brilliant inventor, not through a single moment of inspiration. The invention emerged slowly. First came twisted fibers, then rope, then weaving, then the realization that a flexible wall could catch what a spear could not. Every generation solved one small problem until those solutions became one extraordinary invention. When you look at a fishing net today, it's easy to see nothing more than rope tied into hundreds of knots. But each knot represents an idea, an observation, a failed attempt, a lesson remembered. The fishing net wasn't just another prehistoric tool. It marked the moment humans stopped relying only on strength and speed, and began using knowledge itself as their greatest weapon. Long before we built cities or wrote history, we had already learned something even more important. Sometimes the smartest way to catch your next meal is to stop chasing it.